Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. We are live. Welcome, guys. Stu, what's up, man? Take it away.
Hey, welcome to the Good Life, everybody. So here's the thing for tonight. What's up?
Episode
Oh,
28, too, guys. Fired up.
28? Oh my goodness.
28, 2-8.
We getting
it's
old.
flying by.
We're
We're
doing
almost
some
as
good
old as
stuff.
I am now.
Look at that, man. We're doing some good stuff.
Yeah.
We gotta
So-
do something special for 30.
We do.
Ooh,
We do. Ooh.
taking suggestions for our 30th anniversary chat. You guys want to say something or send it in and let us know.
Let us know.
Today's topic, mental health, and specifically, mental health. We'll probably touch on trauma a little bit. We'll touch on tinkering with somebody's mind for both positive and negative intent. And yeah, so I think first I wanted to go ahead per Kobi's great suggestion of defining mental health, so we can kind of go around the room here. So for me, whenever I think about mental health, there's that whole piece of me that was raised off of health being like a physical thing. So I always compare it back to that innately. Your physical body is able to, it's healthy when you're able to function. Every one of your organs, whether you know it or not, is operating at its best capacity. Like, that's optimum health. To me, I think about the mind and the brain and the atmosphere and the emotions that you're feeling and you're thinking and how you're talking to yourself and the tone of voice of your narrative about what you experience. So to me, when all of that is neutral or somewhat positive, I'm considering you on some spectrum of like mentally healthy. I think the whole mentally healthy should be like viewed like a scale, like 0 to 100%, but we can't necessarily strive for perfectionism. So everybody kind of falls in there somewhere. It's all about the mood and the atmosphere and how honest and no BSing yourself, like all your communication is. Be curious to hear what you guys have to say.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and define mental health as the quality of the relationship between my physical body vehicle and the voice in my head. Right? Because that's what it really all comes down to. What is that relationship look like? And what does that quality of that relationship look like? Because there is a voice in our head, and then there is everything else, and we get to choose what the reality of the situation is or what we accept as reality. That's what I would define it as.
I love that definition, man. I think it's good. Mine, as you guys were talking, mine seemed real simple because for me, honestly, and I've talked about this with a few people recently, mental health as a word, as a term, right? The terminology that we hear mental health all the time, it really just came on my radar 4 years ago in the way that we're really talking about it. I've seen therapists in the past. I've known the importance of having I guess a healthy mind, for lack of better term, right? Like that this is a muscle just like anything else, and us being able to talk about things or right unravel and do all that. Like I've always kind of known that that was important. As we're talking, I'm trying to think back, like did I ever not think that was important? But it's only been over the past like 3-4 years that I've really called it mental health, right? And what mental health looks like or means. And I think you guys' definitions, really summed it up. At the end of the day, I just think it's right that relationship could be, you said, right, the relationship, the connection. It's the relationship between like our mind and the strength, the well-being, the ability for it to be able to function, to bring us what it is that we need to do well in life. Like when we just sit with ourselves, how is our mental functioning, and the health of that, right? Everything has a scale. Stu, you kind of said that, right? Like just not going to be perfect, but like how is it functioning on a scale of 1 to 10? You know what I mean? Like where does it function? So that's kind of how I think about this mental health. But honestly, it's a topic that we need to have more discussion on because we don't talk about it nearly enough. The role that our mental plays in our life in general.
Yeah, the role it plays. I think Kobi, you really touched on it when you mentioned the relationship between your mental and your physical body. And I think also, Chris, you're kind of hinting at your mental state and the relationship with your external circumstances, like whether or not you're meeting your goals, whether or not you have different types of people. Like it all, in my opinion, pivots around mental health. And I think one of the interesting things about this is Kobi touched on the relationship between mental and physical. And the more the more and more physically healthy I become, and I'm not talking about just aesthetics when it comes to like glamour muscles. It's fun. I like glamour muscles, but you also have to do other things with your health, including just a variety of things for functionality. The further I go down that path, I've been seeing a chiropractor for a long time now. I've been seeing a massage therapist more regularly, and I'm healing my nervous system physically so my mental state can have an even better foundation. To me, it's like a leg of the whole stool when it comes to you experiencing your life. Like if one's wobbly, then if one's shorter than the other or less healthy, you're gonna have like a really wobbly reality. Like things aren't gonna make sense. You're gonna feel a lot of confusion. So I like how you guys both drew comparisons and relationships between those.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we kind of embark on the full conversation for today, I do really want to emphasize the idea of that. How do we visualize the mental? Right, the body's easy to visualize. We have input into our visual, channel. But the mental is a little more difficult, right? And it's kind of like abstract, right? There's no concrete, and especially dealing in the Western hemisphere, a lot of folks are looking for concrete things, tangible things, things that are within this level of density and on this dimension. Um, I want to emphasize the point that there is a voice in our mental, and I'll point to the head, but shoot, who knows? It could live in our big toe. We don't really know, but we attribute it to our head, right? Again, to the visualization piece. And it's important that to recognize that peanut gallery, that voice is not you.
Mm.
So if you do something real quick, mate, if you just pause and just like listen to that voice, like do that just now. You know what's going down when people start like smiling and things, right? That voice is saying all types of stuff, right? What's going on? What's his point? What's he doing? Whatever that, blah, blah, blah. I just think it's so critical that every single body recognizes that, because that goes such a long way to address what we call mental health. And I don't want to just assume that we all agree on this huge category of what mental health is, because we start just using terms interchangeably and as if they're the same things, but they're really not. But this voice in the head goes a long way to dictate your sense of ease, right, through as you move throughout life.
Is it the clarity of that voice, or is it just what that voice is saying?
Neither. It is your ability to observe that voice as it being what it is and not reaching judgments based on that voice. So this is the goal of medication. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying. So it's knowing that the voice exists, but not actually, for lack of a better term, not actually like processing it as your thoughts. It's just knowing that that voice exists.
That's what I would say, which is why I say it's neither what it says or the clarity of the voice. Because sometimes that voice is a little too clear, a little too loud. Sometimes what it's saying is good, bad, indifferent. It doesn't even matter. What it is what is the meaning that you create from it? right? What
Right.
is it that you choose to make out of that, right? So somebody sees a bump on their arm, voice in their head, you have cancer. Oh my God, just like grandpa, you're gonna die. Another person sees it and says, huh, I have a bump on my arm. Cool. I should pay attention to that, see what happens. Move on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right. So, and all of that, by the way, taps into all of the other stuff we always talk about. Nervous system, fight or flight, like whatever state. It's there's nothing new under the sun. It's all kind of the same thing.
Yeah. Makes sense. It makes sense, right? Like I always think about scripture where it talks about being able to bring all thoughts into captivity, right? Bring all thoughts into captivity. It's all those voices. It's being able to capture them and know that I heard this a long I heard this a long time ago. Somebody told me it's like you are not your feelings, right? Meaning you are not the things that you think about and that you feel. That's not you. That's separate from you. Those are the right, the signals, the things that are trying, the receptors, the things that are trying to get you to see things and understand things, but your thoughts and feelings are not you. And when you understand that, when you understand that separation, I think it leads more to this, right, feeling good mental, this mental health conversation, right? When you know that those things are different, you are not depressed. Like, right, there's something happening, right? Those thoughts, those feelings, they're triggering you in a certain area, but that's not you. That's not you. And so that's a big distinction I had to learn a long time ago. But I think it could help a lot of people that now that we're having this mental health conversation, they can go down that path and start to see like, oh, okay, like how did that thought come in? I know we're probably going to touch on this as we keep going down because when we were in the pregame, we talked about consumption, right? We talked about it, but that's really what it means to start saying things like, why am I thinking this? How am I? Where does this talk track come from? And it's by what we've been consuming. So yeah, we'll get there eventually in the show.
For sure. I think it's very interesting. I love how the three of us all describe things in such a different way. It's part of what you mentioned could be about like squaring up on our definitions, because not only do people like have different like definitions associated with the word, but everyone communicates their ideas in a different way. One thing that's really cool about having the three of us on here is there's individuals out there that might understand what all three of us are saying on a conversation. There's individuals out there that might only understand or connect with the way one person's saying it.
Yeah.
And when you talked about how all of those different thoughts and voices and emotions are not part of you, they're separate from you, it's interesting because I always phrase it differently. You've actually seen me say this before. I actually consider them to be different parts of me that sit at the table. I actually personify them. I've done this with a couple clients. It's another way of looking at it and sorting out all these different things and recognizing that they're going to sit down at your like executive table of your mind, but they're not you. They just help you make little decisions. There's actually a really cool, I actually had to post it when my client sent it to me. There was a cool commercial with a bunch of Susans, and I'm sure somebody's seen this. I'll have to post it, like I said, where she walks into this boardroom and she actually has conversations with the different parts of her, like the lazy emotion, the annoying thoughts, the gullible one, and all of them help her make a final decision that she's comfortable with because she's given voice to all of them. She's not like completely denied or rejected one, but she's empowered him enough to speak up. So it's a really cool analogy, and I like how you talked about separation. I talk about like this inclusion. So when it comes to these types of things, the reason I like to bring up this whole point that we all describe it differently is there's so many different influencers out there, us as well, that put things in different ways. There's no like one right way to explain a thought. So like sometimes you might resonate with something on an intellectual level, other times an emotional level, and sometimes you just might think about it differently.
I think that's a really good point and a beautiful point because
Don't make me
we are speaking to we are speaking to a very wide audience, and there's different things that are going to connect to different people. At the end of the day, our hope is that you go ahead and connect to what you connect with and are able to pull some information from this that's able to uplift you and to help you design the life that you want to live. That's ultimately what this is all about. So however it is that you connect, whatever it is you connect with, and whoever it is that you connect with, we encourage you to connect with something, God damn it.
That's it. That's
Amen.
it. Amen. Sip the tea. Could be sip the tea right after every that. This is the episode.
Shout out to First Baptist Church.
Way to plug it. Way to plug it. But yeah, guys, like I'm glad we can have this conversation. And for everyone that's listening, again, the reason why we bring these topics up on The Good Life is because these are the things that we have to address in order to get to that next place.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone's getting to a next place in their life. They're coming out of one season, going into another. So how do we start to navigate some of these things, right? How do we start to navigate some of these challenges, some of the things that maybe we're unaware of? Again, the best part about us continuing to do this and add value and chat it up with you guys, because we're all coaches in our own right? Like we all have our, our areas of expertise. But one of the best parts about having coaching is they can identify blind spots, areas that maybe you don't necessarily see right now that are the limiting beliefs, the factors actually holding you back. You may think it's one thing. This has happened to me so many times in my life where I thought it was one thing and then I discovered it was really another thing. Most recently, Kobi helped, right? We went through a 10-day solid food vacation juice feast, and then on the back end of that, doing also like a 21-day workout challenge. Everybody, right? Kobi's the real deal. But the thing that he has put me through that I've been able to see is a lot of times when I think it's one thing, it's actually something different. When I thought it was my discipline, it really came down to my lack of paying attention to something that was more important, right? Like the values that I had, the ways things moved around in my life, where I placed my attention, what's important, going outside, right? There's so many things. You think it's one thing, but it's another thing. So that's what we're bringing up tonight along these conversations where, like, have you thought about the role your mind plays in your ability to do the things you want to do and to have the successes and to have the great family life or the great, relationships or the health the way you want? Have you thought about how the mind plays a role in that? And then what are we doing to continue to shield our mind, guard our mind from the areas or the things that aren't going to help us get to that place? And that's why this mental health conversation is incredibly important. Curious to hear you guys kind of go down that path a little bit about how mental health has played a role for you in your business life and your family life, and how you start to become more aware of these things.
Yeah. Stu, I want you to bring the caboose up and actually hit on like the mental health aspect of it in terms of getting more, just doing what you do. I'm gonna bring it in from a different angle, and then you go ahead and bring it in from your angle of it.
Appreciate
I think that'll be really helpful. So let me just share kind of my story. I think, I had a what a lot of people would consider kind of like a chaotic type of upbringing. My mom had me when she was young. I spent most of my time with my grandmother, who raised me until my mom remarried, and then we relocated to the United States. When we relocated to the United States, going from straight up Poquassee, Ghana to freaking Chesterfield, Virginia. It was quite the culture shock, as you might imagine. I left everything I knew, including I left everybody that I knew, and I left them for good, right? So I didn't know it at the time, but it would be the last time I saw a lot of people, including my grandmother that raised me. At that time, for the first few, my mom was pregnant when we moved over, so I soon had a sister. So I became an older brother for the first time, with quite a bit of gap, almost 10 years. So it was quite a shift in my life, and not just that, I also had quite a bit of pressure from parents. We sacrificed everything to come here to the United States to try to give you a better opportunity, etc. Like, listen, we don't accept A minuses in this house, so it was a lot of pressure to do well and to do really well. with limited resources and maybe not what I consider limited resources at the time, because I'm out here supposed to compete with students that had personal trainers and nutritionists and a freaking tutor that they'd have for their homework, and I'm supposed to like be able to keep up, right? While showing up at home, having to do dishes, massage my dad's feet and clean up and clean up after my siblings, right? So there was a lot, but and did it affect my relationship with the voice in my head? Absolutely. I talk therapy was not encouraged in my context. Neither was really any other type of therapy or way of getting whatever it was, that conversation that was occurring on the mental level out into the sound actual level, and getting somebody else's feedback besides the different parts of me, if you will. Right. So it took a toll. And what it did was I was resentful as a teenager. I was angry. I would be described as angry. I really didn't think I was angry. I just felt like I wasn't heard. Right. I felt like I was nobody actually heard me or took the time to listen to me. So the only way for me to really be heard was to get aggressive. And I'm actually not naturally like an aggressive individual. I actually had to learn to be aggressive. Otherwise, I would be trampled over. I felt like I would be run over. And I was, right? Unless I was being aggressive. So I learned that aspect of things. And then, going into college, I went to college with what would be described as very poor mental health. I went into college. I was actually angry when I went into college. I was ready to mess up anybody that came in my way. I didn't really care. And on top of that, you put behind like physical ability. So I was not, there weren't too many people that was going to beat me, right? And if they were, I was ready to take the punches for that's how my mindset was at that time. And so much so that in my sophomore year of college, I remember that a lot of people remember me for what you call the cake fight. Now, I'm not even going to push this story because it's so silly, and that's not how I want to be known. But if you ask me that knew me in college,
I'm hitting you up. I gotta know this.
If you ask me,
no, not offline, online, on the good
okay,
life.
let's hear it.
Right
let's
now.
hear it.
Let's go.
Let's hear it.
What do you mean? We breaking news right here? We breaking news? Come on. It's episode 28. Episode 28. God damn, y'all crazy, man. Now a friend of mine then was a roommate. We had a suite of like 10 folks. And we showed up, did a happy birthday midnight thing for anybody in the suite that had a birthday. So everybody came out to the living room, was chilling and whatever. And I don't even, this is how dumb this was. I don't even remember the specifics of what the disagreement was. What I do remember is homie was like, oh, something about like, let's say just for story's sake, let's say he said, you have to wait till 12:01 to eat the cake. I'm like, that's stupid. You can eat the cake whenever you want to freaking eat the cake. Like, what are you talking about? He's like, no, you got to wait till 12:01 or blah, 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 blah. And then started like pushing my buttons with some statements that he knew would like get me worked up, right? Because this is what he's an angry dude. He's easily worked up. So say something like, oh, so in Africa they didn't have cake, right? Click, clack, right? So something silly. Something's just silly that just like it probably wasn't even that. It probably wasn't even that, but something silly where I was like,
oh yeah,
you gonna challenge my manhood? Me? You know who I am? The best son of the Shanti, bro. I went bro, I was heated. And so it went from like 0 to 100 real quick, where I was sitting in the couch and I was like, I'm cool. Everybody leave me. I'm cool. Then he said one more thing. And I said, I'll break your neck. I'll break it. So I lunged for him, bro. I had this dude by the neck. I had a dude pinned to the floor, and I was like, if it wasn't for, it took 3-4 dudes in the suite to pull me out the room. Otherwise, it was over for this guy, man. It was over. and over some
All
stupid,
over cake. All
all
over
of
the
the
cake.
stupidness. See, listen, I had so much built pent up.
Mm-hmm.
I had so much I was dealing with, right? I was so much uncertainty, so much pressure, so much that, and no outlet, nothing to really do with all of that energy, but like work, 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 work. And I've been working for my whole life. I basically, since I was like 17, I've been financially responsible for myself. Let's just say that. So it's just work, 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 right? Actually 16 really, but you know, who's counting? Actually, apparently I am. Right? So that was me, and my mental health was poor, was really, really poor. The way I talked to myself was poor. The way I related to others was poor. I was in negative space all the time. And this is the biggest thing. I woke up in a space where it's like, I want to be happy, but I feel shitty right now. My mental off. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm just not in a good place. Like, I could pretend like I'm in a good place, or I could switch it up if the context changes. But I just woke up in a terrible place, and I could not explain why to anybody, because I didn't want it.
Right.
I didn't want it at all. Right. And you fast forward through a little bit, I like really started paying attention to it. I really started working through it. I really started doing it. I even saw a therapist. Like I said, it was a waste of time because they were just like, they did not understand me, my culture. They didn't understand anything about me. What helped was certain individuals. I mentioned this before. Shout out Jean Wu, Tufts University. Really was one that took an interest in me and really started like just. She wasn't a therapist. She was a teacher, right? She just sat down and took an interest in me, and an interest in my story, and actually provided me a space to start to speak, right? Because remember, I wasn't speaking before. I wasn't really a thing. And not speak as in terms of therapy, but speak as in terms of I'm actually interested in your story. What what are you all about, Kobi? Like, what happened? What's going on? Like, what makes you tick? What makes you you? What's up? Like, tell me the good and the bad. The whatever happened. Tell me everything. And then she was also a teacher of one of my favorite classes, which is American Studies, and really put a history to what was going on with me, and allowed me to realize I wasn't insane for no reason, right? So that really helped in my mental health quite a bit, and it was only the beginning of my mental health journey. So I just wanted to share that, kind of like the background of that. It gets, in my opinion, it gets more interesting because it actually starts trending up tremendously. That's like hitting the trough and coming back up.
Awesome.
Thank you for sharing, bro.
Yeah, sure.
Jinx. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, for real. I think I really felt that in the chest when you said you didn't know what was off. You just woke up with it. And that gave me a lot of flashbacks, my friend. So, Chris, anything you want to say before I jump into mine?
No, jump in, man.
All right. So, for me, from what I can remember, life was super, super joyful to experience up until, and it is now. I want to clarify that before I just go off on this and have this 20-minute story and finally end with that. It is now, more so even. But up until when I was about, I think going from it was third grade to fourth grade, I was basically like 8 or 9. I don't know what exactly age it's supposed to be, 9 or 10 or something. But when I switched from public school to private school, everything tanked immediately. It was the craziest transition. Everything that I had as far as social connections was all of a sudden not there, and I received so much negative energy from certain people intentionally, but also just because all of a sudden the playful vibe that I came from and fun and open-minded and all that did not exist anymore. That was not around me. I was in a completely new environment, and I'm actually really grateful for this now because all of a sudden I took my happy-go-lucky, like optimistically realistic personality and was all of a sudden placed in a place where people had like no belief, it seemed, in in like connection and meaningful development and just so many things. It just seemed extremely negative. So I all of a sudden, my mental health, and I all of a sudden just started listening to that voice we've been talking about. Heavy. It's like, okay, something's not right anymore. I'm in a new environment. I'm at this school. All of a sudden, this school's supposed to be the best of the best. All these people that I'm surrounded by are supposed to be like the cream of the crop. And all of a sudden, I just feel so much negativity from the people around me. Why is that? What's wrong with me? Because it can't be that everything else around me is off. That's statistically didn't make any sense to somebody that's 10 years old. It's like, there's no way. What are the chances that everything around me is off? And in reality, in my mind, it was. Everything that I had known about public school and different types of people, some wealthy, some not, some white, some black, some everything, different religions, all of that open-mindedness stopped. So for me, I went into like this crazy depression, and I think like everything was great, and then it just downhill, just immediate drop. I went through middle school and high school feeling the same way, surrounded by the same people. So now I had already bought into all of these narratives that I had labeled my community with. I was really bought in. I could not see it any other way. So I stayed depressed. When I got to college, all of a sudden I found an amazingly diverse group of guys on my hall in Bonnycastle. Shout out BC1R. And that's at UVA. All different types of people. Tope, one of Kobi's favorite, one of mine, that they have like this funny beef going about God in Nigeria. But
I mean, it's not a beef, man. It's just straight facts.
and it's always interesting. But when I got to UVA, I started to find a bit more of my tribe. I started to feel like I was surrounded by diversity and open-mindedness again, and I was able to become myself. I didn't have to fit into this boilerplate. So I also then began to figure out the awareness of actually being honest with myself that I was depressed that whole time. And I think part of me always knew, but I didn't want to say it because I didn't want to affect my parents. I didn't want that to bring them down because I'm the only one. And so I kept all that in. And then finally, I basically, as soon as I realized that, oh shit, I've been depressed, like seriously, fully, honestly admitted it to myself, of course I get a text right in my punchline.
As soon as you realized you were depressed.
As soon as I realized I was depressed, thank you, Kobi. I began to like really, really work really hard on my mindset all the time. I sped up everything. Like I would hyperanalyze everything about my situation, everything about what's going on up here, everything about how I could do better. And if you know me, you know I talk about personal development all the time. I can't help it. It's how I work. I love it. I love it. And I just went way over the top with that and got super anxious trying to figure all this stuff out, making all these calculations and like just going crazy. So I went from anxiety to depression to anxiety. And then finally I was able to, I allowed myself to go see a therapist when I was 22, thanks to an awesome partner of mine at the time who encouraged me to do that. And that began to open up this idea that I could actually change, because I had worked really hard, but I really didn't make much emotional change or have any like hope about my future. So that opened the door. Then that just made me get involved in like developmental programs in civil engineering and construction. And then finally, that's how I became a coach, because I was like, I've been living this. I've worked through it on my own for a long time. I now understand the power of helping somebody else see their situation so they don't do the whole thing in their head, because shit starts to echo. It goes back and forth. It becomes so loud. It doesn't even make sense anymore. So that's how I'm here.
It's huge, man. That's a big deal. I didn't know that you were all about personal development. We've had our conversation, man. I know we've talked about it, but I didn't understand how important that part of it was for you, because that is 100% what I always lean on when it comes to this mental health conversation, is the personal growth, personal development side. It's interesting. Was it innate in you? Like, did someone put you on to personal development? How did you learn that like this was the way to do things?
Two things came up. I think one, to address that I didn't know. A lot of people don't know that about me, that haven't. I mean, you and I, we're really starting to get to know each other now. But people that know me for years understand that it can be confusing if you don't know me well, is what I'm trying to say, because I spend so much time developing my ability to have fun as well. So if you're not actively involved in a discussion with me, you might just think I'm going out and I'm having a crazy ass time and I don't have care in the world. It's like, no, you're just seeing my nightlife. You should see what I do when I'm like really getting after it, because I had so little fun for so long. It throws people off. So I'm glad you actually made that point up. I brought that point up. What was the second thing you mentioned?
I don't even know, bro. I was just saying how personal development, how did you learn it? How did it become aware? How did you become aware that that was the right way to go?
Man, that's a great question.
Because
I
it's
think,
not innate. Like that's why the point I'm trying to make is it's not like everyone's not equipped with that, right? Everyone doesn't know that like if I'm feeling depressed, if I'm down, and you were an adolescent, like you were basically a child when you started to understand like, well, if I just lean into this stuff, it'll
yeah,
make me feel better. I didn't
I,
get that information till I was in my mid 20s.
yeah. I think we there's a lot of like celebrities or figureheads or like industry leaders that we look at, and they maybe they have this story of struggle that taught them hustle. And I think that's what happened to me mentally and emotionally. It was so shitty of an experience for me that I was like, I'm not spending the rest of my life like this. I'm figuring this shit out as soon as possible. So that, I think that was it. Like that was my struggle. Like, if you look at, my financial background or what I look like, or, whatever, you can make a lot of assumptions that I didn't have my own personal struggles. But for me, it was up here, and it was dealing with my emotions, and it was creating false narratives, and just, yeah, just not having any control over what's happening.
Yeah. Man, again, this ties in. I had talked about it just earlier, but again, we talked about it on the pregame. This ties into 100% what you consume. What you consume has a full correlation to what's happening up in your mind and like your mental health, right? Has full correlation. And I don't think enough people understand that. And we talked about it a bit on the pregame, but I'll go dive in now. Like the fact that you led in with that, Stu, as far as like personal development being something that was incredibly important for you to be able to say, you know what, this is how I get myself out of it. Well, a lot of people don't know that the things that they're consuming is what's putting them in it. It's what's putting them in the thing that they're struggling with. It's the fact that they are watching a bunch of horror movies or something and wonder why they're anxious. They watch a bunch of drama, reality TV, and wonder why their relationships aren't the greatest or why they always find ways to nitpick and right start arguments. They watch the news and wonder why they have no peace, right? And why they think everything's gonna kill us to some degree, right? It's because of what they're choosing to consume, what they're choosing, and again, we use that word, and I'm using that word consume. I always give it up to Kobi because he's the one that was saying it a bunch and it really resonated. And I know we talked about this, you diving in and really talking about what consumption means, especially from your side. But if we're just taking consuming and reading and what you're putting in, right? As far as reading material and things like that, what you're reading and watching and listening to has a huge effect on then what your outer world, your inner world, and then your outer world becomes. And I don't think we're having the conversation enough about consumption. So could be like dive in a bit, man. Talk a little bit about consumption and right your definition of it, because I think you have a really good working definition of like consumption and getting people to understand it and how this affects.
Yeah. So listen, we can overcomplicate this or we can make it real simple. Whether you're talking to my seventh grade biology teacher, Mr. Moeller, who says everything is connected, or you're talking to the great Bob Marley who says everything is vibrations, right? Or you're talking to a physicist who's breaking down molecular biology, or a chemist who's breaking down molecular biology, or breaking down the makeup of matter and how energy is not created or destroyed. Whatever way you understand this, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Everything has an impact on you. Everything is connected to you. So if you're not vibrating how you want to vibrate, you got to look at What am I hearing on a day-to-day basis? Am I hearing encouraging words? Am I hearing a sound that's vibrating and allowing my nervous system to be at ease? Am I hearing sounds that are causing me to be releasing fight or flight chemicals when I don't need to release them? Am I hearing sound that's causing me to be in fright, right? In continuous sense of low state of vibration, whether that's music, whether that's words, whether that's the sounds around you. There's a lady that's I don't think she'll mind too much, but she shared in our massage therapy course. She shared that's the first time she's received massage. She's probably like in her 50s, I would guess. First time she's received massage, and when she was young, she slept like a baby till she was about 8, and that's when she was in a country that was war-ridden, and so she would have missiles flying by overhead and would hear these missiles, wondering, okay, am I going to be hit next, right? So she now couldn't sleep for a while because of those sounds that were sounds of destruction, sounds of things dying, sounds of screams, right? And she messaged, her point of sharing this was that, when she started receiving massage after joining this course, she can now sleep again, right? And tears are rolling down her face as she's telling the story. And you can tell how much of an impact that's had on her for 50 something years, right? It's important, right? So if you live in a neighborhood that's got constant gunshots, if you live in a neighborhood that's got birds chirping, right? If you live in a neighborhood that's got a stressed out mom who's got 3 jobs just to care for you, so she's always in a state of like angst, right? So that you feel like you got to go protect, you got to go provide, you got to all of that connects, right? If you're constantly seeing violence, or are you seeing demonstrations of love? Are you seeing certain colors that are triggering the release of certain chemicals in you? Are you seeing blood, murder? Are you seeing, right? And this can come from our TV screens. This can come from what we see right at our doorsteps, right in our household, right in our country, right in our neighborhoods, right? This can come from things that we see as we go to certain parts of the world, right? Things that we are taking, things that we read, right? As
Video
images
game.
that we see, video games, whatever it is. All right. What are you smelling? And what do you attach that to? Right? Do you attach certain scents to being in a place of safety? Certain smells of food, certain smells of whether it be you smell fresh baked bread, so you attribute that to being in a safe place because your grandmother used to make fresh bread on Saturdays, or your grandmother used to make tamales on Fridays every day, and you smell that and you say, man, grandma's here, it's all good, right? Or do you smell chemicals of gasoline being poured and spilled on your streets, right? Or do you smell the smell of things decaying and dying around you, or the smell of life around you? And what does it elicit in your brain, right? What are the words that you speak, right? What are the words that you speak? Because now you take it from hearing and seeing and smelling, and now you are actually participating actively. Now you're using those words that you heard in the television. Now you're speaking how it makes you feel. You're speaking destruction, right? What is that? You're now an active participant, okay? What are the things that you put in your mouth and taste, and what does that result into, right? The things that you go ahead and you consume. What are the hormone configurations of the living organism that you just put in your mouth? Was that thing just raised and slaughtered and lived a terrible life, or did it live a free life and it was ready to go and said, hey, listen, I want you to take my nutrients into you because I don't want it to go to waste, right? Or I don't want to give it to the earth just now, so you can have it, all right? And yes, you can have it, no harm, no foul. I got it. It's my time to go. Or are you forcing that thing to a point of death where it's not ready, right? Are you applying heat to it so that you're killing it before you actually? How on earth can you derive life? Can you go ahead and get life from something that's dead?
So interesting, man. I'm gonna stop you just real quick, and you can jump back in because you bring up the point of a lot of times it's about the how, right? Not the what. Not what are we eating, but like how are we eating this thing? How are we consuming it? How did it live, right? When you're talking about those things, I know for some people that are listening, they might not understand, right? Like what you're saying about like really taking into consideration, because a lot of us are far removed from this. Take into consideration how that animal's life actually was lived, right? Like, was it a free range something? Was it just out? Was it just having a great life? Was it raised to do its purpose in life? And then when it was time to go, like Kobi said, right, it was killed. The meat was taken, right? Like it was, that's the natural process of life. Or are things being forced? And then we're consuming those things that are being forced, because all of those things play into how we feel, how we think, how our body functions, how our mind functions. And so I just wanted to bring some clarity to that point because it's important. And I don't think enough of us, again, when we don't have these conversations often, we get very far away from that. It's not about, it's the how, not the what. It's not like, oh, you shouldn't eat meat. Oh, you shouldn't eat this. Oh, you shouldn't consume that. Like, it's about like, well, how are you consuming it? Why? What's the purpose of this? And are we careful around that process? So
Yeah.
continue, man. That was just
Yeah. I mean, you hit on a good point, and I'll expand on it a bit. And I'll start off by saying, the what does matter. The what does matter, right? Don't get me wrong on this. The what does matter, okay? When we consume certain materials, we're essentially, and we consume living material, right? Whether it be plants or animals, we are stealing energy, point blank. And everything has memory, right? So whatever that thing, whether it be water, plants, air, and of course, animal tissue, it has memory in there. And when you consume that memory, tells your DNA. Now you could call it hormones, you can call it whatever you want to call it. I want to stay on the top level abstract because it allows us to think more freely than to, when I say memories, it elicits a whole, or hormones, it elicits a whole bunch of other things that I don't necessarily want to elicit. But it tells your DNA then how to express itself. It gives your DNA information as to what to do and how to express itself. So it does matter. But what matters more, because we've essentially are dying on that cross, right? You must be keto, you must be carnivore, you must be plant-based, you must be meat-based. Well, guys, like it depends. And I choose to believe that we have an all-knowing, merciful creator who knows that in certain situations we may be forced to eat other animals. So what do you do at that point? Well, it now comes down to how you take that. Do you just ungrateful, inconsiderate, and just take the life of that living thing without giving its proper death, its proper processing of treatment, right? Just like you would for any loved one, and its proper thanks, and then its proper consumption of it. That actually matters a lot more. See, I say the what matters because I don't want you walking away thinking you can eat whatever the damn hell you pleased and everything is going to be well, because that's a straight lie. That's not true. However, I also don't want you leaving thinking, oh my goodness, I've eaten a piece of meat, I am a sinner for life. That's not how that works either. Okay. See, we live in a society that we want point blank answers. We want like this or that. Should I eat this or that? That. Well, you need to slow down and figure out what you're doing and how you're doing it, because that also matters. See, when I like to give both of those, the what and the how, because when I give just one, people tend to go to the extreme of whatever it is. All right. So it's like, oh, I knew it. I can eat meat. Now they're eating meat 3 meals a day. We don't need that. We don't need meat 3 meals a day. We don't even need meat in a week. We don't even need it in a month. Right. So like the thing is like don't go crazy. And then there's those that think, oh my goodness, I can never touch anything that's ever been really? That's tough. That's tough. And that's not necessarily that's no longer about health. That's just about you um clearing your conscience. And you can clear your conscience by knowing that what you're doing, that life is both life and death. It's both sides of the coin, right? So I think it's incredibly important. And let's to go back to our ultimate point here is that ultimately the reason you care is that all of this stuff has an impact on you, and not just on you, it has a huge impact on your mental health. Okay, the hormones that you're consuming. There's a reason for. Let me give you an example here, and you should look this up. There's a reason for kosher and halal. There's a reason for that. It's not just some absurd like religious thing that's just thrown in. There's a reason why they say, hey, listen, if we eat meat, otherwise we would not eat meat otherwise. But if we eat meat, we have to what? Raise it a certain way, slaughter it a certain way, prepare it a certain way. And guess what, guys? I guarantee you right now, you put halal meat next to non-halal meat, you can taste the difference. You can taste the difference. No question. And not just that, you then have to consider, okay, why are they doing all of that? Is it because they're weird heretic, like lunatics? Or maybe, just maybe, it relates back to our health, right? Why is it important to be a virgin until maybe, just maybe, it relates back to our health, right? Why is it important to rise with the sun and go to sleep with the sun and give thanks at noon and pray at particular times? Maybe, just maybe, it's all medicine, and it's all built and designed so that we're being recharged, just like a car battery. As you drive in the car, it's recharging itself. I believe we were actually built that way. As humans, we were actually built that the more we live life, the more supercharged we become. We should actually be in a society where the oldest are the healthiest. I mean, repeat, we should actually be in a society where the oldest of us are the healthiest.
Yeah.
Amen.
But we don't, because we live a life that everything we do just drains our energy rather than to recharge us.
And I could not agree more. And to add on to that, and we are raised to believe that it's the exact opposite, that you're going to get less healthy as you get older.
And why is that? Why is that? Our elders have lost the way.
Mm.
You want me to tie something else in, and I'll let you get right back to it.
Yeah, go for it.
I say the same thing about what they teach us about our money too. They actually convince us that we're going to be poorer when we're older than we are now. They actually tell us that, hey, you should put money in a tax deferred product because you'll be at a lower tax bracket when you're older, which means you're making less money. You have less money coming in. That's literally how they condition us to think, even in the financial world. But go back to what you were saying.
Oh man, you hit that on the head. You hit that on the head. So silly, man. It's so silly that we're so backwards. The elders, right? So if you look at the way civilizations used to be that the wisdom keepers, right? We're the elders. So we like, you care for your elder. You look up to your elder. You provide for your elder. You make sure your elder is good and good. Now what do? We throw them in nursing homes and we call it a day.
Right.
All right, we gotta live life, man. We young, right? We young, man, and we out here making all these dumb mistakes. And guess what they take with them? They take that knowledge with them, right? So for every generation that goes by, instead of us getting wiser and wiser and wiser, we actually get dumber and dumber and dumber because we're making the same stupid mistakes over and over again, rather than learning from dad's mistakes, grandpa's mistakes, and great grandpa's mistakes, right? So we're regressing. We're not progressing. We're regressing. We're not progressing. I think it's incredibly important, man. And all of this stuff comes from what? Their ability or lack of ability. I've never seen a group, and I'll be traveling the world studying this for sure, but I've never seen a group where the older among us have so many issues mental health wise. So many issues. They can't remember anything. They can't do anything. They can't do anything. They can't talk. They can't move. They can't do any other stuff. That's not supposed to be happening to us. That's not natural. Right? I used to always people always go, oh, wait till you're 35. Wait till you're 45. Bruh, I'm gonna be better at 45 than I was at 25. I'm 30 right now. I'm better now than I was at 20.
I was just listening to Nick Cannon say that on the Dr. Savy documentary, there's a part where he always talks about he's like, what is he, 80 something or 70 something, and he stands on a desk and he jumps off the desk and lands on his knees. And it doesn't even hurt him. And he's like 70 something. And it's like the most amazing thing is like, I can't do that when I'm 35. You know what I mean? Like the amount of like dexterity and his bone structure and all of that is just far beyond like anything that we believe is even capable for us. Yet that's actually how it should be, right?
Yeah.
You know?
1000%. The Tara and Mars, the best runners in their society are the oldest.
You know, this has got me thinking about the mental side, like you said, about like, you know, people losing their minds, getting dementia, all kinds of stuff, and the reasons as to why that may be. I think alcohol is a big part of it. The more I research it, the more I realize that I'm messing with a pretty powerful substance. So, you know, when it comes to the mind, like for me personally, like if nobody else believes this and doesn't listen to like Chris or Kobi or whatever, let me just take one shot at it. Like my mind and Kobi's, as you were listening to him, and I'm sure Chris feels the same way, is 1,000,000 times better than what it was when I was younger. Like you can actually beat this idea that you're supposed to age with anything but grace. Like I'm going out in style. That's my plan. So, you know, when it, you know, and one thing I wanted to just touch base real quick as we come to our final minutes is, Kobi, you at one point asked me like what exactly I do. You talked about visualizing the mental and how that's not as easy as visualizing, you know, health or physical matters. I help people come up with exercises and present them with visualizations to help them understand and unlock how their brain works. It's an extremely custom process. Sometimes I kind of feel like a surgeon when I'm doing it. And I'm getting better at describing the way in which I do that through all my clients. Because it's the same approach, but it's very difficult for me to put this approach into words. That's why I actually enjoy people looking at my reviews. I don't self-promote much because I don't know exactly how to say what I do yet, but just check out my reviews if you want some feedback or hop on a phone call with me. The mental is a powerful spot, man. I'm glad we kind of gave it a spotlight tonight. Does anybody have any like final comments? We really didn't get to like trauma or tinkering with the mental, but we can kind of save those for another call.
Listen, I'll leave it like one last piece. And Stu, I think you should clip that the way you just described it, and I think you should continue to mess with the words as you keep going because that is powerful description. And I think sometimes it really comes down to being able to communicate what it is that we're doing, so people understand that. Oh, okay, got it. I need that. I got 7 baby steps to health. Right, and this book will drop 7 baby steps to health. And I'm telling y'all, step number 1 is solid food vacation juice feast. And the more I learn, the more I'm convinced this is the case, because it is the access point that a lot of people in this society need. Because once you start to clear your gut, a lot of things start to happen. And we take it for granted as to what's going down. And it's not just physical, but it's also mental that's taking place. There's a real mental habilitation that takes place. There's a real physical habilitation at the skeletal level, muscular level, neurological level, at the endocrine level, at all types of levels that takes place. So I would encourage you that if you haven't found your access point, right? If you haven't found somebody that's showing you an access point that works, that go ahead and try this out with me. 10-day solid food vacation juice feast. The next group of individuals is August 22nd. August 22nd. Go ahead and hit me up. Stu's gonna be there. Chris already graduated. Go ahead and really join that, and let's take you to a different level. Because what I try to do in those 10 days, I try to give you into bite-sized pieces the information that I've run into that's completely changed my life. Right? And that information is really the gateway for you to start then taking your power and your control back. So DM me and let's go ahead and get you on that. It's free. Okay. I do this because I love it. I do this because I love the people. I love the results. I love what they get out of it. And guess what? It's gonna work so well. You're gonna want to pay me. So it's all good.
That's it. That's it. All these things are there, and take Kobi up on his offer. Take Stu up on, like, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening at us or watching us on a replay or right now live, guys, like, this is serious. This is your life. This is your life. This is it, right? We get one of these. I know some people might think you come back. I get it, right? It's cool. But really, you get one of these. You get one of these. Right? Like,
come back if you earned it.
Maybe, right? Yeah, if you earned it, right? You can come back. So we want you to be able to take care of yourself. We want you to be able to take care of your physical being, your mental well-being, your spiritual being, right? Like, all of these things you have to pay attention to if you want to live that good life, guys. Again, we titled the show exactly that, because these are the things that we want to have conversations about that push us more towards that way. The life that you are designing, the life that you don't need a break from, right? Could be. That's the name of the game. That's the name of the game. Tonight we touched on the mental health piece, and there's so much more we can dive into on this. Hopefully everyone knows, right? We only went an hour. Well, the pregame was an hour, but we only went an hour on the show. We can go so much deeper into it.
Man, I could talk about this every show for a year. Hell yeah.
There we go, right? This is what Stu does, right? And so for sure he can talk about the mind, but it's just important for all of us to really start to get some awareness around it and start making our strides in the right direction, becoming more aware of the things that we need to shift in our life in order to get there. So this is awesome. Hopefully it's been awesome for you guys. We love it. We have fun. We enjoy chatting with you. Feel free to reach out, send us a message, DM us, anything. We want to have the conversation, keep this conversation rolling every single Wednesday. We're coming here every single Wednesday. Pre-game is at 7 Eastern, 4 Pacific on Instagram. The show is 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Jump on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram. We're here. We want to get you value. We want you to be a part of this good life with us, and continue to tune in every single week, guys. So we love you. We want you to win in life. Let's go out there and make it happen. Until next time, let's have a good week. Enjoy a good life. Take care.
Take care, everybody.
So what?